Obviously, joined by Tom Walker, creator of the internet sensation that is Jonathan Pye, the frustrated television reporter known for his off-air rants and known to slip in the odd swear word. So that's my duty done. Okay. So Tom,
hello.
As a political satirist, okay, what a wonderful time to be alive.
I'm really lucky actually. I mean, lucky, but you know, this all started sort of out of desperation, and I made a little video about when Jeremy Corbyn came to lead the Labour Party, and it just sort of happened, and then Brexit, and then Trump, and then everything else that's going on, and sort of the worse the world gets, the better my career does, which is really great. But I'm convinced that I'll be there with my Oscar the day nuclear Armageddon happens. That's my trajectory at the minute. So yeah.
It'll happen just before you get your hands on it.
Yeah, just that bang, all done. Yeah.
So crap time for the rest of us, but great for you.
It is. I mean, it is weird because I mean, Brexit's such a, no one saw that one coming. Trump is really difficult to satirise because he sort of does it himself. Yeah. So he does. Do you know what I mean? I mean, how do you make a joke out of him because he's already a joke? He is. Do you know what I mean? And so I find Trump really hard to write for because actually all you could do is just read his tweets out, and it Absolutely. Would be that simple to make it sort of. Well, he's demented. I mean, he really is. Yeah.
And he writes your material for you?
He does. Yeah.
So how did you invent the character?
Okay, so there is. I'm an accidental political satirist. That was never really supposed to kind of happen, and it was really about the character. What he's really about is that there's this YouTube clip of Peter Sissons, right? And so he's this old BBC stalwart. Newsreader, and it's a YouTube clip, and I've watched this clip just hundreds of times, and it's him, he's slumped over the news desk, and he's watching The Weakest Link. They've obviously gone to the sport or the weather or something, and he's just slumped over the desk, and you can hear him watching the Weakest Link, and he just goes, Jesus Christ. Anne Robinson, she's even got new tits, and this is from Peter Sissons, right? And I love this idea. And it's this idea, and we can all relate to Pye. Whether you agree with his politics or not is neither really here nor there. You can relate to him because we all have these different personas, right? You've got your a festival persona, you've got your lunch with your mum persona, your first date persona, your mate's persona. It's still you, but you can flip between those personas, the work you and then at work, and you suddenly take a personal phone call. You just flip personas like that. And a newsreader is sort of a heightened version of that, because it's a very formal way of behaving, but the minute the producer goes, cut, you can go, oh, fucking better out than in, and do you know what I mean? And because they're human, so that is what was the starting point. He was supposed to be a comedy character, a newsreader who's a bit vulgar and says what he thinks. But the politics kind of was the thing that grabbed people's attention. So I've been very reluctant to say it, but I mean, I can now confidently say it. I am a political satirist, and that was never the intention. But I think maybe because I was never I was interested in politics, but I wasn't particularly well versed in it, that I hope that gives it a lightness of touch. And I also hope, which I hope I try to do. It's very, very easy to have a go at Trump and Theresa May and the Tories and all of those bastards. But also Pye is frustrated with the left. He's frustrated with their tactics. He's trying to explain to the left why they keep losing, and they keep losing because they think they have the moral high ground. And actually the reality is that most Conservative voters are really nice people. The media would have you believe that anyone that voted Brexit is a stupid, racist, bigot. It's just demonstrably not true. And I think as Pye's gone on, he has become he's become just as unbalanced, but for everyone. Do you know what I mean? So there's a bit of balance in there, I hope, which pisses a few people off, but it would be boring to every week just be having a go at Theresa. It's nice to have a go at the left as well, you know?
Yeah, well, you've got to be fair and take the piss out of everyone equally.
Take the piss out of everyone, but also, you know, Pye, and he is like me. He's an exaggeration of my politics, I think. But I'm really frustrated with the left, and I'm really frustrated with I mean, one of the bugbears that Pye would have is an obsession with identity politics that they have on the left at the detriment to poor, white working class, towns and cities and communities, and that they're lost. They're lost to this idea that of this very prescribed Guardian reader view of what the world is. And the Guardian has its place, but the idea that the Guardian is any less that has any less of agenda than something like the Times is a preposterous notion to me. I mean, the Guardian is obsessed with the way I see it, and the way Pye would see it is the left are obsessed with diversity as long as it isn't diversity of opinion, and I think that's where they fall down, in my opinion. Yeah.
And fair to say that your views are leaning to the left?
A little bit left.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the thing, and Pye is an old school socialist. You know, he is proper left. You know, so Pye hates Tony Blair more than he would Theresa May, without a doubt, because Tony Blair pretended to be left, and this is the problem that we're in with the left. Okay, that you can have progressive politics, and progressive politics is great when it comes to things like gay rights or rights for women and all of that, and that's great. That's progressive, but you can put that up as a sort of wear that as a mask, and then still be really neoliberal, still be pro-corporate, still fuck the working classes, fuck them in the ass. But it's all right. We bring in gay marriage. Gay marriage, for example, fucking brilliant. Progressive. It costs no money to bring that legislation in. That's why it's easy. It's easy. And brilliant. And brilliant. Wiping out homelessness, that's difficult. That costs money. So you can wear this veil that I am a progressive because I agree with equality. Well, so you should. It's the 21st century. But I live in London, and there's two guys walking hand in hand, fucking brilliant, next to a guy who's homeless. Well, we're kind of fine with that, aren't we? We're kind of fine with that. And that's the dichotomy, that's the problem with the left right now, that me having a go at identity politics somehow makes me right-wing. It's not. I think identity politics is fine, but not to the detriment of struggling working class people, because that's what Labour used to be about. That's what left-wing politics used to be about. I'm rambling. I'm just rambling. I'll just keep going until you interrupt me.
So it would be the same with cutting employment support allowance while still claiming your expenses for your duck house.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean that's what politics is, and it's I think the right and the left are getting it wrong at the minute. You know, I mean, look, for example, all right, Tony Blair might be a difficult one because I'm sure a lot of you voted for him, and that's absolutely fine. He hoodwinked you. Basically. But if you look at the last election, Trump or Clinton, the idea that Clinton was on the left is a fucking preposterous notion. So you may as well vote for Trump because he's offering you change. Clinton ran on the same. No wonder she lost. You should have been. You should have got a better candidate. To lose against Trump, she was bad. She was a terrible, terrible candidate. You know.
And what about our election result? What did you make of that? Did it surprise you?
Personally, I was surprised at the result. I thought it would be a bloodbath. I really did. We've got to watch ourselves on the left because we're feeling very, very pleased with ourselves right now because of that election, and rightly so. Rightly so, because Corbyn did... the problem with Corbyn was, right, Corbyn is is that we all have a go at him because Laura Kussenberg, she's anti-Corbyn and blah, 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 blah. The reality is, you might not like this, is that Corbyn didn't engage with the media for the first 18 months of him being Labour leader. That's why they hated him, because they couldn't get an answer out of him. What happened with the election was, it's an election. You have to engage with the media. And the minute he did that, everyone went, he's not this commie bastard, is he? He's got some, their manifesto was fantastic. It was, for me, it was an old school socialist manifesto, which was about looking after the working classes. They addressed immigration by going, you can't have your wages undercut by anyone outside the country. You go, that's a sensible immigration policy, that's great. But next time there's an election, there is no way on God's earth the Conservatives are going to run a campaign that badly. So I think we just need to just double check ourselves. Next time they're going to be better, and they're going to be much better. So it was a great campaign. I think it was a perfect result. In respect, this is me personally, Pye wouldn't agree with this. I don't think Corbyn and Labour were quite ready for government. But what they are now is a strong and stable opposition. I mean, she fucked herself. She wanted a strong and stable government. Well, she got a strong and stable opposition. His position as Labour leader is solid. A socialist agenda. That was what was brilliant about this, for me, is a socialist manifesto. He proved that was electable, that people could vote for slightly higher taxes and better public services, and he's managed to change the Conservatives' agenda. Thatcher said this about Blair once. She said that her greatest achievement was Blair, because she managed to persuade the opposition to change their mind, right? So her greatest achievement, as far as she was concerned, was New Labour. Well, I think now old Labour that are back, right, they have managed to change the government's point of view, and kind of austerity seems to be dying a death, not quick enough, but, they've suddenly realised, shit, we can't get... I mean, look at her, the polling when she went in there, she thought she could get in with anything, and act like a metal Mickey and just sort of just do this, and no, you've got to make an effort. Don't call, if you're going to call it, if she'd have bothered, she'd have won that outright, but, Well, again, I'm rambling. I'm just yeah.
You only need to look at the way that Jeremy Corbyn engaged with people with real empathy, and she wouldn't even meet people.
And also, he was willing to answer criticism, have some questions thrown at him he was engaging with people. And people saw that on the TV. They saw him engaging with people on the doorstep. Some people saw him speak and realised that he's all right. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I like him, and I can understand why people wouldn't. But he's not just a socialist. I thought that most of the policies in his manifesto were really well thought out and good.
So then, what was Theresa May's biggest mistake, apart from calling the election in the first place?
It wasn't a mistake, her calling the election. Anyone in their right mind would have looked at that polling and go, right, fucking, let's go. Let's do it. Really. Well, 6 weeks' time, we'll get an increased majority. Her mistake was as we just did with Brexit, as we just did with Trump, assuming you'd win. If you assume and I said this about Trump all along, the minute the Democrats think they've got it is the minute he gets it. And you could feel it palpably about 2 weeks before. You could get the sense that she was taking handover meetings in the White House by this point. She just sat back and went, it's a done deal. Well, then you're buggered. And she didn't tell her ministers. The ministers were on the doorstep going, I don't know what we're standing for. Apparently, we're going to... all I do know is we're going to start taxing people with dementia. That's what we're running on. Just like, well, you're going to fucking lose then. Of course you are. And she is one of those, in the same way that Cameron, I mean, if you look at Cameron now, he seems sort of quite human, actually. I mean, pig fucker that he was. Do you know what I mean? But he was affable. He seemed well met. He seemed like the sort of person, despite yourself, if you were at some sort of gathering that he was at and you were introduced to the Prime Minister, you'd kind of go, actually, he was really nice. But with Theresa May, you just walk away and go, is she alive? The way I was describing her is like a really good Jim Henson puppet. Do you know what I mean? Like a really realistic Jim, but you can sort of see the sticks. Do you know what I mean? Just like, are you fucking human? And that's the problem, is that you get you've got it more with Cameron, I suppose, this idea that how dare you talk about homelessness and poverty and blah, blah. You know, I know where you come from. And you can't possibly have it. There's this great thing that happened, actually, when he first got in, and he did an interview, and he said, well, people keep saying my wife is, from blue blood, and she's actually quite unconventional. She went to a day school. And that to Cameron, that not going to a boarding school is unconventional. And you kind of go, how can you possibly know what it's like to have no money and then get diagnosed with cancer? Because you're thinking, not only are you thinking, am I going to die, you're thinking, am I going to have to sell my fucking house or my record collection? Or, how can you possibly know what it's like to struggle unless you've struggled, I guess? I don't know.
And because they don't seem to work and live in the real world.
Unfortunately, they do live in the real world, because the real world is this sort of capitalist society we all live in, which is all fucking great because it means we can all afford to come here and we all have jobs and homes and it's great. But the real world is that, and you kind of go, well, it's the problem is it's all about the economy, which is obviously the real world, but the economy doesn't matter if you've got nothing. Interest rates dropping by 0.3%, which is good for them, and the GDP, I can't afford to fucking eat. And that's what, so it's about being unrelatable. And Corbyn, he might be, Corbyn's really boring if you think about it. He enjoys his allotment and he's dull. But when he talks about certain things, you kind of go, you do get it. You do understand it, and that's why he's attractive, I think. Just when you hear someone speaking, you kind of go, yeah, I can see that you get it, Yeah.
So how long's Theresa May going to last?
Oh, I don't know. I think she's here for a while. I did a little bit about this a few weeks ago. Brexit's going to be a mess, whether you voted for it or not. It's not going well, they clearly don't really. The problem is if you voted to leave the EU, that's fine. But one assumed, I think, if you put your cross next to that box, well, the politicians that are for this must know how this is going to work. And the problem is, of course, it was kind of clear to me at the time that, of course, no, they don't. So it's going to be a shit fight. So you may as well keep Theresa May in, because she's damaged goods, she's awful, she's unelectable, she's barely electable. She can take the hit. In 18 months' time, we're out of the EU, then we have what looks like a very nice, pleasant handover. And then the shit really starts, because by that point there will be a natural heir, and then they will call an election probably. We might see a full term. And then Corbyn's going to have real trouble, because they're not going to repeat the same mistake again, Yeah.
To me, one of the big things why Corbyn did so well was engaging the young people. And to me, again, that was one of the big positives from the election, was that so many young people went out and voted.
That is true, and that didn't happen. This is why I didn't think they would do so well, is because Brexit, you had all these young people kind of going, yeah, man, the EU is amazing, and the EU, trust me, isn't. But it was the lesser of two evils, in my opinion, staying in than leaving. But the EU is pretty fucking vile. But most of them didn't go out and bother to vote, because we all assumed that we'd stay in. This time round, they did bother to go out. There's this whole thing at the minute that Corbyn apparently said that he would, wipe a load of student debt. He didn't say it. I've tried to find an interview where he did. But they're kind of coming back, well, these young people thought that he said that. Well, so if he loses all of that vote, well, they were just being stupid. I think the young vote is really important. I don't think they'll come out next time. I don't know. I don't know.
Must have been a real eye-opener for them going out to vote for the first time, because they have to show more ID to buy a pint.
Yeah, So I thought what was interesting with this election as well, whether you were given a choice. You actually had a choice in this election, which is probably why more people went out, as opposed to Miliband or Cameron. And you kind of go, well, they're both these sort of, this pretty slightly right of centre parties. This time you had a right and a left. What's interesting, we haven't had a left in this country for about, since Blair got in, 20, 25 years. So Corbyn seems extreme, but he isn't. He's just left. He's just actually left wing. I don't think he's extreme. So I think that might have got more people out this time. Is that you were literally going that or that, as opposed to now. It was much more about personalities for about the last 20 years. Who do you prefer? Because basically their manifestos would have been pretty much the same. Whereas this, you had tax people with dementia or a slightly fairer society. It was sort of, for many people, it was kind of a no-brainer, really. Yeah.
But I think, as well, social media played a big part. Is that something that you detected?
I've always been dubious to sort of talk about whether, quite a few people, it always scares me, people come up to me going, it's really important what you do. It's like, I don't see it that way at all. I'm trying to be funny and trying to hold a mirror up to things, but I'm not sure it's important what I do. But I did do a piece for this election, which was about, and I tried to make it as bipartisan as possible, about getting young people to register to vote, because it's too late 2 days before to go, I think I might vote. Have you registered? No, I can't. And that got shared about or viewed about 9 million times. And you think, well, if 1 in 10 of those persuaded, and then you go, well, if 60% of them are voting Labour, which would probably be my demographic, 67%, well, yeah, then maybe I persuaded 100,000 people to vote Labour, which might have tipped a few things over there, and you're going to go, yeah, sweet. So I suppose social media does have a problem. Social media is really problematic, because the problem is, which is what happened with Brexit, is we're all sat there looking at our feed going, oh, if you're even considering voting Leave, you're a bastard. So you think everyone's in agreement with you, because everyone's saying exactly the same thing. And then the next day you go, oh my God, I'm living in a country of racists. But because Facebook has told you that you're racist if you're voting that way. And so social media did us no favours, I think, in that particular referendum, or plebiscite, as it's called, which I love that word. Literally going to the plebs. Love it, a plebiscite. Whereas this time round, it seemed to work a bit better. I think this time round, it was literally peer pressure of going, are you voting, are you voting, are you voting? And people picked it up. I think we're in danger with social media of being in a bubble. What's interesting with what I do is that obviously I've got a sort of a fan base, but you'll sometimes find somebody, I mean, he's a character, and sometimes he says something that's off colour or could be taken as misogynistic, and I'm never listening to you again because you said something I disagree with. And then you go, well, then you're part of the problem. I mean, like, for me, if I'm on Twitter, and if I see someone retweet something from someone and it's some awful right-wing thing that I totally disagree with, I follow them. I follow them immediately. I don't ban them. I follow them. I want to know what people are saying. So on my Facebook feed, I got Labour, the Tories, UKIP. I want to know what they're saying. It's really, really important. Whereas these days, no, ban them. He said something awful. So social media, it's an odd one. And I think what I do as well, people forget that it's satire. People forget that it's authored. I did one the other day that was about, and I started it off by going, oh, we think we've won the election, so we can all go back to doing what left-wingers do best, which is finding a fence where there is none. And then went on to this scatological, sexually charged diatribe at Theresa May, which was authored to be just on that edge. And I made a joke about shagging a fat bird in Magaluf, right? There was a joke about that in there. And the shit that I got off that. And you go, he's a character who is talking to his producer. This isn't within its world, it's not privy to anyone else, and he's just having a chat. I'm never listening to you again because you made a joke about shagging a fat bird in Magaluf. And the idea that I didn't know that was offensive when I wrote it, it's sort of bizarre to me. But I think that is the social media... and also by virtue of it being on social media, it's I will comment. I enjoyed that joke, but you weren't right there, and you go, oh fuck off. It's you know, of course I'm making it up. You know.
So do you get many people think that you're real?
Well, everyone calls me Jonathan. But that's all right. That's all right. And I think most people think that that every opinion I put across is mine. I mean, our politics are very, very similar, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't always put it in those terms. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people think that they can't quite work out what it is, which at this point I'd go, come on, you must fucking work out that someone's writing, performing this, and it takes more than one take to do it in. But, you know, if people think, oh, I think a lot of people don't quite get what it is. I think what's interesting is most of the demographic here would understand what I do because they grew up on angry, ranty, anti-Thatcher satire. A lot of the young generation, they think what I do is new. It fucking isn't. Just shouting at Theresa May. Go back 30 years, it was full of it. People just getting really, really angry. I mean, that's one reason I'm glad Corbyn didn't get in, because I'd be out of a fucking job right now. Do you know what I mean? You know, thank God for Theresa May. I hope Boris gets in next. Boris and Trump, fucking Oscar, and bang, all gone. Yeah.
So given that it's fairly realistic, have you had any journalistic training or voice coaching?
No.
Because you've got the voice. Yeah, that
It's quite easy. I mean, a lot of journalists have come up to me and gone, did you used to do this before? And you know, you're fucking crazy. No, I mean, I'm an actor. This is how I started out. I was an actor about 2 years ago. I'd been an actor for 15 years, which basically means call centre. Hello, we'd like to buy gas for 15 years. And I'd had enough. And it's very easy to... Well, it's not very easy, but it's easier to be poor with no direction in your 20s. Well, I've got 40 looming over the hill now, and I'm like, most of my... Yeah, they've got a fucking Mondeo. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like... so I just decided that would be it, but I'm not going to go out without a fight. So I made a few videos, and this is what happens. I've forgotten what the original question was. I'm so sorry. What was the original? Because I had somewhere to go with this.
About your journalistic training and voice
coaching. So I'm an actor, right? So I had to start writing my own material. But actually, one of the easiest acting roles would be to play a newsreader because there's a very it's a very prescribed way of talking that no one in their real life would talk like. And it is just that. And again, we're talking about that idea of flipping. So when you're in that very, very obvious reporter mode, and then you can just go, oh, I need a shit. Then so it's easy. So no journalistic training whatsoever.
So do you think the newsreaders go home and talk the same way? Good evening, darling.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
Home.
What's for dinner? Cottage pie. No, I don't think they do. I don't think so. Yeah.
Right, so going back to politics, and I've got to be careful here because the festival organiser, Peter Chegwin, who does a magnificent job, by the way, and is the man that pays you.
Yes.
He's a Lib Dem councillor.
Yep.
Right? Okay. He doesn't pay me, so I've got nothing to lose. Lib Dems, what's the point?
Right, the Lib Dems. I think there are two Lib Dems. There are two different versions of Lib Dems. There's Lib Dems pre and during the, what do you call it? Basically, I have recently tried to become an adult, so I moved from Foster's to IPA, right? But I'm learning my limits. I'm relearning my limits. So right now, I'm fucking hammered. What do you coalition. So you've got, that's the word I'm after. So you've got pre-coalition and coalition, and then you've got post-coalition, right? Now, I think the Lib Dems were really badly done by the electorate. What the Lib Dems did is they reined those fucking Tories in so that we didn't have motorway privatisation, limited workers' rights, cuts to sustainable energy, weakening the Equalities Act, inheritance tax for millionaires, cutting that, blah, 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 blah. They reined all of that in. And we fucking slaughtered them for it. And then look what happened. Motorway privatisation, limited workers' rights, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Now, when you go into a coalition, you've got stuff in your manifesto, and you go into a coalition, you go, I'll give that away for that, I'll give that away for that. And they gave away tuition fees, their tuition fees pledge, for a promise to have a referendum on the way, we vote, right? The alternative vote system, right? A system which anyone who bothers to look at how it actually works will in about 30 seconds concede is a vastly fairer way of fucking voting. Asked what you'd prefer, you can't even get a vote about a vote right, okay? But they gave that away and they got slaughtered for it. I think it was really unfair of what the electorate did to them. They basically blamed the Lib Dems for Tory excesses. And I bet Nick Clegg wished he'd stayed on, because I think if he'd stayed on as leader, they'd have done much better at the last election. The problem with the last election, and this is where I might piss a few Liberals off, but I'm sure there's quite a few people that voted Brexit here too, is they stood as an anti-Brexit party, right? Now, my problem is they're considered liberal, Democrats. So, they're pro-democracy, one would think. Now, a referendum is a democratic vote. And what I did and what Pye did is very, very quickly accepted that result. More people voted the way I didn't want them to than did. You've got to fucking accept it. It's a ridiculous notion to run the let's have a second referendum, let's go again. It might be preferable to a lot of people, but in my mind, and trust me, I'm lefty, and I don't like the fact we're leaving the EU, which is actually a contradiction in reality. But when people voted with their no to Brexit, when they all marched, that was an anti-democratic march because they're basically asking you to overturn it. Now, that might be an uncomfortable truth, but that's my point of view. So the Liberal Democrats, I think, they wasted the last election and deservedly didn't do very well. But the election before, I thought they were extremely hardly done by. And the Tories knew what they were doing when they started out. They go, well, fuck them from day one. And I was surprised at how badly they did. But the Liberal Democrats, it's not the same Liberal Democrats as it was 3 or 4 years ago. So, I mean, I have voted Liberal Democrat in the past, but it wouldn't have occurred to me to vote Liberal Democrat in the last election.
Yeah. So you weren't one of the ones cheering when Nick Clegg lost his seat?
No, I think he was a decent, progressive, modern politician. He had the fucking suit. He knew what he was kind of doing. He was affable. So he had that smarmy politician thing that you've got to have. Let's face it. Questions later. But yeah, But that's my opinion. What? Statements now. I can't hear you, but we can chat afterwards. Okay. Next up.
Okay. Right. So, talking of minority parties, then the DUP. What the fuck's going on there?
I'm a bit in the dark with the DUP. I didn't really. The DUP. You've got these sort of weird Northern Irish people there. Half of them don't turn up for various reasons. The DUP, I suppose. I mean, the thing with the Tories are they will cling to power for dear life. So I'm not surprised she did that.
So how's it not a bribe? The £1 billion.
No, it's a bribe, yeah. I mean, of course it's a fucking bribe. But, I mean, I tried to do so. Again, this is sort of, when I've pissed someone off over there by saying something you disagree with, which is fine. But when the DUP came in, I tried to write something, and I thought, everyone's having a go at the DUP, so let's try and find some positives. And you go, £1.5 billion injected into the Northern Irish economy is a fucking great thing for Northern Ireland, no matter where you stand. Even Sinn Féin dude... fucking hammered, Jerry. Even Jerry just went, yeah, fucking great. And they hate each other. So, of course, that's a great thing for Northern Ireland and good for them. Look, I mean, the Tories have never pretended to be that progressive, let's face it. So, I mean, Corbyn would not get into bed with the DUP if he'd have ended up with that same margin, but... look, it's a shit fight. She's clinging on for dear life. We all know it. So why not get some? So I'm not going to go any further. I'm sure they're lovely.
Okay. All right. Nice easy one. Then we'll go with UKIP. Have they, what's their purpose now?
Their purpose is they don't have a purpose anymore, and it's kind of do they even exist now? I mean, do they even actually really exist? UKIP's an odd one because a lot of people vote for them. They did, well, certainly 3 or 4 years ago. You know, they were becoming quite populist, which is fine. And what they're doing is they're engaging with the working classes in a way that the main parties don't, and that's why they're attractive. Literally just because they're talking to the working classes, which the main parties have just stopped doing. It's all about in America, it's all about middle-class values. The working class are never even mentioned, and it's the same sort of here. So actually UKIP were trying to get this working class vote, which is what Labour managed to convert. This idea that people are amazed that people went from UKIP to Labour, well, in my mind, that's where they came from, because someone's talking to them. But what's interesting is that we're all very, very willing to label UKIP as racist, bigoted, utter bastards. And there's an element of truth in that. But there was something that happened over the election, which I thought was really interesting, which is a problem with the left. They did the, I nearly said presidential debates, but they did the debates with the leaders. And it was just after one of the atrocities I think it might have been the London Bridge thing. And Griffin, no, it's not Griffin, that's BNP, isn't it? What's his fucking name?
Nigel
Farage. No. Nuttall. Went out, and in it, he said, he started talking about the cause of this particular atrocity, and he said, well, in my mind, it's Islamist extremism, right? And everyone around him went, you bastard, you racist, how dare you use that rhetoric, how dare you use those words. 24 hours later, Theresa May went outside Number 10 and she said the problem is it's Islamist extremism, which is exactly what it is. That's exactly the right phrase. Islamist extremism. It's not Islamic extremism. It's exactly the right phrase. He was derided for it because we assume everything he says is racist. And Theresa May wasn't, because we assume she's just a fucking muppet. So I just thought that was a really interesting moment. He's the only person in this debate saying exactly what it is. It's uncomfortable and it's not fashionable, but that is demonstrably the cause, okay? Why can't we have a discussion about that without being called a racist? So I think UKIP has exposed the problem with the right and the problem with the left in equal measure. I don't like them. I think their chances... I mean, Farage he did a speech yesterday just going, oh, Trump's really hard done by. No, he's not. He's a fucking cunt, is what Trump is. So UKIP's a really interesting one. I'm not defending them at all. I think they're a bunch of arseholes. But we've got to be really careful to assume that anyone that voted UKIP is... It's like the idea that anyone that voted Trump is a misogynistic, racist, blah, 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 blah. No, the majority of them wanted change or are generally Republican and would never vote elsewhere anyway. He's an arsehole. Not everyone that voted for him is. They might be misguided, but they're not arseholes. All of them.
Yeah. You said earlier that maybe we should talk about Donald Trump, but unfortunately the festival ends tomorrow, so I'm not sure we've got time. I think somebody needs to tell him that he no longer has to fire somebody every week. Yeah,
I've written this week's about him, and already it feels old because it just keeps happening. But the point that I'm making this week is that the job of a president, you don't have to be a career politician, although it helps. I think Trump has exposed how important politicians are. We might fucking hate them, but there is you're either a career politician or a vocational politician. So I would say that Corbyn is a vocational politician, but there are career politicians. They want to get to the top, and that's great. But there is a language, diplomacy. Diplomacy is important because it stops us killing each other. It seems silly, being polite to people or bowing at the right point or having this agreed way of behaving. It's political correctness, diplomacy. It's important. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that in his body. But the thing about all these people that he fires, it's a demonstration of how bad he is at his job, because the job of a president is judgment. And the job of a president is to surround yourself at people who are better than you are. And Obama, who was a very, very smart guy, law, graduate from wherever, one of the Ivy Leagues, and you know, whether you liked him or not, he was smart, and he tried to ensure that he surrounded himself with people that were smarter than he was. Trump sees that as a threat, which is why he is terrible. And it's taken longer than I thought, but it is literally falling around his ears, you know.
So have you thought of taking Jonathan Pye to the States?
Yeah, fucking, I'm thinking HBO series, yeah. So I'm waiting for the call, really, yeah.
Yeah. That's if you get in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think he'd work in the States. The thing that kind of cemented me as I'd been around for about a year, and then Trump got in, and then I released this Trump video the day after, and I attacked Clinton for it, and so everyone watched it. It pissed everyone off, which was great. And that was the thing that kind of cemented me. So I do have an audience in America now, and I don't know. We'll see. We
might see you standing outside the White House and then being carted away by security.
I'm trying to crack the UK because I'm still not on the fucking telly. So Jesus. So.
But you have got a tour coming up, which we should mention. Coming to Southampton Guildhall on Friday the 16th of March.
Yes. Yes, so I know that. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I did a live tour last year, and it started in a 60-seater venue in Leicester Square, and it grew and grew and grew, and it ended up my final night was at the Palladium. It's just like, why not? And so I'm going to write a new show, and I think this time round it's going to be more anti-left than it is anti-right, but in a cool way. So, just having a, fucking mansplaining. Shut up. If I'm mansplaining, it means I'm explaining to you. And if I'm explaining it to you in a patronising manner, it's not because you're a woman, it's because you're a fucking cretin. Do you know what I mean? And I'm patronising and rude to everyone. But if you want special treatment, you can fuck off back to the 1950s. That sort of thing.
So will it be a series of rants or a Q&A?
No. I would be in character in this point. Not that you can differentiate between the two right now. The last one was set on Children in Need Night, and he was a replacement for John Barrowman. And so it was Pye trying to do light entertainment, which obviously didn't go too well. This time round, I'm not sure quite what it's going to be, but it is, it's a character piece, and we'll see what happens, Okay.
So how are you going to develop the character? I mean, any thoughts maybe of a head-to-head with Malcolm Tucker?
He is. I mean, there is a Malcolm Tucker. Oh, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be
fun. He's out of a job now, isn't it?
Yeah.
That glass ceiling's been broken for Time Lords. I don't know. I'm trying to write something for the TV for him. It's difficult. You take the beauty of social media is I can say whatever the fuck I like, and if it pisses people off, that's absolutely fine. You suddenly go into a meeting at the TV, you go, oh, you can't say that. Yeah, but it's a joke about that. I'm going to tell. I wrote a line, and it involved the word spastic, right? And in it, someone turns round and says to the character that says it, you can't say that anymore. And then a joke ensues, not using the word, okay? And I was told in no uncertain terms that word is not allowed on television anymore. And you go, but it's a joke about, it's not a joke about that. It's aping. I just found it really, really frustrating that what you're basically doing is you're shortening my vocabulary for sake of political correctness. And you go, that's kind of Orwellian, isn't it? Why can't I talk about the idea that 20 years ago that word was acceptable and now it isn't, and have a joke about someone not having caught up with progressive attitudes? That's what the joke was, but that word is a no-go. and therefore it's so we can't discuss it. We can't even discuss the progression of language with regards to certain words, and I find that regressive. I find that Orwellian. I find it kind of throwing it down the chute to burn our history, and that's something that I'm really interested in exploring. There's a whole phenomenon at the moment that people are trying to tear down statues of colonialists, slave traders, basically. I'm not sure what that achieves in my mind. That isn't a statue of a colonialist. You go, who's this dude? It's like, well, actually, he did this, and he was a slave trader. Colston Hall in Bristol, they're having to change its name because Colston was a colonialist. Well, who wasn't in that time? Bristol's economy is built on it. It's built on slaves. To wipe that out, to pretend it didn't happen, is revisionist. It's Orwellian. It's 1984. But it comes from a very good-natured side of the left. But I think it's misguided. I think it achieves... So I'm trying to write something for the TV about this. You can imagine that they're not really queuing up for it. But I think they're interesting discussions to have, and that's what I'm trying to do all the time. I hope there's no one in this room that has agreed with everything I've said today, because if so, you're mad. Because I'm an individual, and you're an individual, and you're supposed to... But I think we're getting to a point where if your offence is the worst thing that you can cause, and you go, nah, I mean, if I'm offended by something, I think, well, that's something within me. I'm rambling here, but this is a good point. I saw Frankie Boyle, which is not to everyone's taste, but I saw him live, and I thought he was I think he's great. I think he's great at what he does, but he's not to everyone's taste. But I sat there, and it was at the Hammersmith Apollo, so it's 3,000 people. And there were 2 or 3 occasions that evening where I went, oh, fucking Jesus. You've offended me. But, of course, the people around me were laughing. And, of course, 10 minutes later, I'm howling, crying with laughter at something, but the person next to me is going, that is. And you go, it's personal. You can't legislate against offence. You can't do it. But I think we're in danger of hitting a point where being offended is awful. It's fine, great. I learn something about myself every time I feel offended. You go, well, that's my limit. What's wrong with that? If you don't like it, get up and leave.
And then you wonder why you haven't cracked it on TV.
Yeah, exactly. Or America. Damn, fine.
So
I did a thing for. I don't know if you've seen the MASH report, which is the new sort of satire thing on TV, and I wrote something for them, but it was anti-left and it was anti the Guardian kind of fashionable view, and I haven't heard back. And you kind of go, isn't it more exciting to challenge a little bit? And I watched the MASH report and I thought it was pretty good, but there wasn't a single joke about Brexit that wasn't having a go at anyone that voted Brexit for being thick and stupid. And you could just kind of go, oh, is that really? Is that it? Is that all we're allowed to do? It might be more interesting to expose how awful Brexit is by taking it from the other route, but I'll sell out at some point and I'll do any old shit for a check, but I've got about 6 months in me before I sell my soul, I guess.
So they've not roped you in for comic relief then? Kick it off with Malcolm Tucker.
I did a little thing for comic relief, and they didn't allow me to swear. So they are the least viewed videos I've ever put out.
So you can't do a pound a swear word. People
that would work,
you.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
You and Malcolm
a tenner
Tucker.
for a cunt. Yeah. So sorry. It's a family show. Had to slip one in. If only. I'm here all night.
So right, that's thrown me. So where now? Any thoughts of being a sports reporter? That could work.
Partridge. He's been there, done that. No, don't do sport.
You don't do sport?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. You fucking mentioned sport. That is one way to shut me up. Football. Gone. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I think we've got about 5 minutes left. If anybody wants to ask any questions.
Oh. Tell us a fucking joke. Hello. The question is it possible to be a right-wing comic? I've met a few, and this is the problem with the comedy world these days. I am considered by the comedy world, believe it or not, by some sections of the comedy world to be right-wing, because I dare to question the left. So most comedians are scared to not be part of the prescribed view, which is why satire is so anodyne on our screens. That's why there's no right-wing comedians. There is no balance. The MASH report, they've tried to find balance. They got some right-wing comedian on. He's very good. I've met him. He's great. And he talks about the fact that he votes Tory. But the idea out of the entire comedy world, there's one guy whose USP is that he votes Tory. You know, to be a right-wing comedian, you don't have to be, whatever his name was. What was his name? Bernard Manning. Yeah, you don't have to be. I think you think of right-wing comedians. Oh, they're racist. No. But why not take the piss out of Jeremy Corbyn? Why not take the piss out of Labour or the left? The left are ripe for it because they're so sensitive. They're so sensitive about anything that. I disagreed with that, so I'm going to go home and kill myself. Well, that's really open for comedy, but it's not fashionable, and it's not. It clearly doesn't pay their bills. So there are right-wing comedians, but they do it under the radar, and I don't think that's good for anyone. I might disagree with them, but this is the problem. It's we're in the business, certainly from the left, of stifling debate. We're in the business of stopping arguments rather than winning them, and that's where the problem we're at. And it's the same within the comedy world. I see it all the time. So. I've met one or two right-wing comedians, but they keep it under their skin, which is a shame, I think.
Anyone else got a question?
Do I think Trump will be impeached? I think it's becoming more and more likely because the Republicans have finally had enough of him. They're finally pissed off with him. The problem is then you get Pence, and he's a right-wing arsehole who actually knows what he's doing, which might be more dangerous. I think it's entirely possible because impeachment proceedings have only started against two presidents, I think, and they were started for much less than this. There was one guy about 150 years ago, and he was impeached on a technicality, and then it was Clinton for not jizzing on an intern's dress, but jizzing on an intern's dress and then lying about it. It was the lying that was the problem. I think Trump's done much worse than get a blowy in the White House. If I was president, wouldn't we all? I don't know. I did a joke one of my first, when Trump first got here, that the only reason Clinton was winning, I'm so sorry about this, but that the only reason Clinton was running is that the first thing she'd do if she made president is grab the first intern and make him eat her out. So the whole thing was just this revenge against Bill. She didn't want to become president. She just wanted to fuck someone in the Oval Office like he did.
And that's a painful place to be fucked.
It is, yes. In the Oval Office. Hard and fast.
Okay. So if you could hack Donald Trump's Twitter account, what would you tweet?
I'd just delete the account, I think. I mean, the Twitter thing is ridiculous. We all use it, and some politicians use it more and more, but he's at one point slagging off Rosie O'Donnell, and then in the next tweet he is announcing foreign policy. He did it the other day when because Russia was headlines, he decided to fire 15,000 transgender people from the army without consulting anyone because he knew it would give him a headline. And I misspell on Twitter because it's fucking Jonathan Pye. Who gives a shit? He's the President of the United States. It proves everything you need to know about him. He's not being advised by anyone, or if so, he refuses it. If you're refusing to spell check announcing a change of foreign policy against China in 140 characters, you are not suitable for the office. So every time he goes on Twitter, he proves how awful he is at the job that he does. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up. I'm over Brexit. I'm over it. I really am. It took me about a week to just go, okay, it's going to be a shit fight, whatever. Trump, I still see Trump sometimes and go, I can't quite get my head around it. I really can't. And you'd have thought by now he'd have been fine. If he'd have surrounded himself with good people, he'd just sit there and sign his things and blah, blah, blah. But the fact that he surrounds himself with these awful sycophants, the White House is in meltdown as we speak. Meanwhile, he's tweeting, "Great day at the White House." It is a joke. It's a joke.
So, just to finish then, what do you see for the coming year? Because nobody could have predicted the year that's gone. Oh, go on then.
In 3 years' time, yeah. Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's a fucking... Bernie Sanders was great. I think they should have taken him over Clinton, although on paper he's slightly less electable. And I'm not sure... What you'll notice with Sanders, he got no negative press. And I think if the negative press went at him, because they wanted to get rid of Clinton, I think he'd have had trouble if he'd have made it. I think he's too old now to go again. What they need to do is find a progressive candidate that's young and charming and that can articulate a sentence. And I think if Trump stands again, he'll easily be beaten. I don't think Trump's going to stand again, because then he's done it, he doesn't have to lose, doesn't have to do it again, and he can stand back, and he was the president. Right now, my instinct is he won't run again. Sanders, I don't think we'll see him again, but he is, in theory, the leader of the Democrat Party now, and it's all the better for it, because he's a lefty, and that's what... You should have a right and a left. I mean, that to me is... That's why I think our politics is in a great, great state at the moment. You've got a right-wing government that is weak. You've got a strong left-wing opposition. Now we can start debating. Now we can start having arguments on a fundamental level. Do you agree with socialism? Do you agree with the NHS? And you can actually have an argument and debate. And I think that's what they need to have in America, because they didn't have a grand debate there. It was Clinton in the pockets of everyone, or Donald Trump, who is obviously demented and unqualified. I mean, it really wasn't much of a choice for a lot of people. I would have voted Clinton, but I can imagine being in a position where I would have hated to put my cross next to her. But against Trump, it was no brainer for me. But Sanders, I wish he'd have done it, and it would have been interesting to see what would have happened. But I don't think... He's fucking old. I mean, he is old. He's like an unrealistic Jim Henson puppet. You know what I mean? It's like he's an old dude.
Right, well, I think we're getting the sign that we're going to have to leave it at that. But we can all say thank you very much to Tom Walker, Jonathan Pye.
Thank you. Cheers.